Okay, good morning everyone. If you're not already watching my stream, please hop on the stream. Today's theory that we're going to go through is going to prepare us for our first lab, which is working with the MongoShell. And so the theory and what we're going to explore today are the command line commands when working with a Mongo database. And so last week we did an intro to what is Mongo, and we installed a lot of the tools, including the MongoShell, or Mongosh as you might remember it. And I'm going to point your attention kind of starting off. There is a link on the PowerPoint. If you go back to the PowerPoint called the MongoDB intro lecture on slide number 36, you can see a link for documentation. That link for documentation takes you to this URL. So either you can open up the PowerPoint and click on that link, or you could just type this in, mongodb.com docs MongoDB shell. We will be walking through these commands. Now I want to start off the top with the importance of this and why we study it. It's because learning these Mongo shell commands allows us to not only work with the data from the shell, which it can be beneficial, but also the code that we write in Node is very similar. It's not exact. It's not 100%, word for word, line for line exact, but you're going to become comfortable with these commands, which is going to help you become comfortable writing these queries in Node. Okay, so I would argue that learning these commands kind of set us up for understanding these queries when we actually write them in the future. So again, it's kind of setting up a base knowledge for how this all works. Now, last week we went ahead and we installed the Mongo shell, which, if you open up a command prompt in Windows, type in cmd, and you just type in the word Mongosh, Mongo shell, you're just going to see that this is a recognized command. And so if you kind of did the software setup last week, this is kind of where you are, which we don't need to hit Control-C or exit to get out, I should say. We don't need to be in there at the moment because you can see this connects to the local. If you take a look at that green, it's MongoDB at 127.0.0.1. 127.0.0.1 is an IP address. It's called the loopback address, aka your local machine. We're not connecting to anything in the shell, in the cloud. And so we're going to connect to our Cloud Atlas database and be working with our database in there. So that's kind of the setup. That's what we're learning. That's what we're going through. So the Mongo shell is a fully functional JavaScript environment for interacting with Mongo deployments. You can use Mongo shell to test queries and operations directly with your database. Now, we've already downloaded and installed it, and we've kind of already started this connecting to deployment. I'm going to invite everyone to go to their Atlas. So if you just log into mongodb.com. We did this once last week. We'll go ahead and do it again. Go ahead and sign in. Okay, now I've got some different projects. I believe you should all just have a project 0, right? Got one thumbs up. And a sample DBs, we didn't do anything with it, right? I think we just installed. Now my sample databases is in a project called Mflix, realizing that Mflix is a play off of Netflix and movies, right? So all of mine. Now if I go to Browse Collections, there we go. Okay, so here's when I look at my cluster has a bunch of different databases on it. I'm asking you guys go to Project Zero, and you should see your sample databases, which we installed last week. Okay, now to connect to this cluster, right, which has all of these databases, we just need to connect to it from the command prompt. I'm going to back up and I'm going to click on the database tab right here. And you're going to see the big button that says connect. So on the left hand nav bar, click on database, click on connect. Then you're going to click on shell. Of course, if you're connecting using the GUI, you can click on compass, and we'll do that eventually. But this week is all about the shell. And they give you what's called a connection string. A connection string is basically your credentials, username and password. In this case, it doesn't have my password because I need my password, but it also has the URL of like where my cluster is. Okay, so connection string is just that. What's the information that you need to connect into this cluster? And the most basic version of that is what's the URL, what's the username, what's the password. So I'm going to copy my connection string, and I'm going to go into my command prompt, and then if I just right click in the command prompt, it should paste. And as I say that, maybe Control V. It's not playing nice. Let's try that again. Okay, I just had to do it again for whatever reason. And I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to give me a password prompt. So I'm going to pull up my password. That is one thing I'm not able to help you guys with, is what is your password. Let me pause the recording, so I'm not going to record my password on the internet. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and paste in my password, hit enter, and I'm in a good place. If you are authenticated, let me go ahead and pause. I should be able to show DBs is the command and see all of my databases that we were just looking at on the website. These are my sample databases. And that would be on your Project Zero. My project, I just named it mflix, but this is where we're starting today. Okay, we are all connected. So if you're taking any sort of notes, you know the first command is show DBs, right? So that's a good one. We are currently using a DB called test. You're going to notice there is no test DB, you know, but it kind of defaults us into this test database that doesn't really exist, so that's fine. So show DBs is your first command. Let's type in the word use, and we're going to type in sample underscore M, then you could type the rest FLIX or just tab it out, sample mflix, and that autofills. In fact, if you just type in sample underscore and start tabbing, no, that doesn't work. You gotta at least type in sample M, and that'll get us there. So now you could see we're using a different database, right? So we were using this test database. Now we're using sample mflix. So there's your second command, which is the use command, which is going to allow you to select a different database. So everyone should be connected in under sample mflix. And now let's go ahead and type in show collections. And so these, remember, collections are the equivalent of our tables. Okay, and inside of collections we have a bunch of documents. And so we have like a movies collection, a sessions, theaters, users, comments. And now going back to our docs here on the MongoDB shell, now that we're connected, there was a different command. There just used to be a Mongo command. Now there's the updated Mongosh command. They talk about, you know, some differences there. We're not going to learn the old stuff. We're just going to learn the newer. So not so concerned about not so concerned about the old command line utility. We are using the newer command line utility called Mongosh. To see the complete list of methods supported by Mongosh, refer to the methods. So let's open up that tab. And just kind of browse through. This, as you kind of scroll down, a lot of these methods, these are not the normal, what we'll find ourselves using. But if I kind of scroll down, you can see we can get, there's a find method, there's a remove and remove one, replace one, update one. There's one called upsert, which is interesting. Insert, collection methods. This is where we're getting. Create index, delete one. Here we go. So these are the methods we can perform against collections. Okay, so these are what we will be working with. For example, find, db collection find, performs a query on a collection or a view and returns what's referred to as a cursor object, which we'll talk about cursors as we get into this. So find is our read operation, right? So we're going to read data out using find. We've got insert one, which is going to add one document to our collection, one document at a time. There's insert many. So if you have a bunch of documents you want to insert at once, you can use insert many. Okay, so these are the methods that we'll be using. Kind of back up a little bit. Let's go to perform CRUD operations. Right, so again, we're back here on the docs for the MongoDB shell. And let's look at CRUD operations. And let's look at reading operations. So in SQL, right, what was the command that we learned in SQL? To read. It's like the command you wrote all the time. What was? Not show. What was the SQL command to read? Select. Hey, there it is, select. Select from where? Remember that? Select from where. So let's open up the query documents. And this is a good article because it relates it to SQL. So hopefully you guys, as we go through this, will at least say, oh yeah, I kind of remember select star from. Remember that? I got it highlighted. Remember select star? Ringing a bell? Okay, so select star from movies. In Mongo, the equivalent is db.movies. Movies is the name of our collection. .find. So let's go ahead and type in. We're using sample mflick, so we're connected to our database, db movies.find. We hit enter, and we get more data back than we know what to do with. Now, it's interesting because it says type IT for more, right? So this is not, these aren't all the movies, but you can kind of scroll and see this is certainly the first, I don't know, however many movies. Plenty of movies. If you pay close attention, you're going to see that any given movie is a document. Like see where my cursor is? So we got the curly brace. Each movie has an object ID. Okay, I didn't hit on that enough. on Friday, I kind of reflected on that and I said, you know what? Every document in Mongo has an object ID as its unique identifier. Okay, and remember when you're generating this object ID, is it possible that two object IDs are the same value? Yeah, technically it's possible, but there's so many letters and number possible combinations. It's extremely small to the point where you could just safely say it's not going to happen. It is possible. Literal, you know, if you're going to be hyper literal, yes, it is possible, but it's also just not likely to happen.
If you're making a database that's going to be really big, and should you put in a statement to make sure they're not the same in making something?
Again, I think it's so unlikely. The expression that comes to mind is like it's the number of combinations more than the number of atoms in the universe or something like that. It is so incredibly small that I don't think you need to do that. Okay. Okay, so we have a document. This document has a unique object ID. And then what do we have? We have keys and we have values. We have key. Now notice the values could be arrays or they could be nested documents. Okay, that is something that is different in Mongo, is that ultimately your values are scalar. In other words, they can have multiple values within them. So keys and values. And again, those can be arrays, or they could be like it is here. If you look at awards, awards is a subdocument. And so, you know, the question becomes, well, when does a key have an array versus when does a key have an object? And it's like, well, does it have a bunch of the same things? Then you put those same things in an array. But if it has a single thing, and that is a complex thing, then it becomes an object or a document. Okay? But then ultimately, this object, if you kind of scroll down, closes right here. Okay, so it kind of, and then there's a comma, and then we open up the next document. So that's kind of select star, and that's where you would start from. Now that we're able to query all the movies, learning the syntax here for find, these find queries, how can you start to, you know, not get everything back? Well, let's find, and then notice find takes a document or an object, if you will, keys and values. So we're going to do a find where the title is Titanic. You might remember from SQL, select star from movies where title equals Titanic. And let's kind of bring that in. So go ahead and type, and I type in CLS to clear the screen. DB, movies collection, find, curly, document, title, property, of Titanic, and we get a single document back with a title of Titanic. Actually, looks like Titanic is stored in there twice, because if I look closely, there's our first document, ends right there. Maybe different years, you know, if you get into it, which I think there was a Titanic made in the 90s, and I'm sure there was a Titanic made at a different point in time.
Actually, one was 96 and one was 97 is the year.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
well, on this list as well.
Yeah, okay.
One's
Different years.
No,
What was the query?
yeah.
Right there. Now, just on observation, right, as we're going through, I put the key in quotes, but notice here, like the title is not in quotes. So just because I'm curious in nature, I'm going to take that out of quotes. I'm going to take the title out of quotes and see if that also finds. It does, right? So if I clear the screen and I put the title property of Titanic, it does still now. This is actually a shorthand, and let's see if I can get this right. This is a shorthand for what's referred to as a query operator that's equal to. And so I could modify this query and hang tight until I get this right. I'm going to put title colon. I'm going to wrap Titanic inside curlies. I'm going to put EQ colon. $EQ. That's $EQ. Okay. So this command, this $EQ, is referred to as a query operator, and these query operators are going to allow us to write more advanced queries. So these query selectors, and we're getting in pretty quick on this, right? You're going to remember all of this from the SQL days. When one thing is equal to another, if one thing is greater than the other, greater than or equal to, if one thing is in an array, so there's a $in, right? So the mistake that I made, I forgot to put my $. But again, this query equal to Titanic is functionally the same as title colon Titanic. So there is an implied query selector of EQ. But now we're going to write a different query operator of $in. Remember, $in matches any of the values of the specified array. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear the screen. CLS. Go ahead and I'm gonna paste these query selectors. These query selectors are going to help you do a lot of your lab work. Okay, because obviously I can't go through all of these. I can just give you the fundamentals, I can give you the resources, and then you're going to have to kind of piece these things together when it comes to writing these queries. So I'm going to post this in Discord. All right, and I would go ahead and bookmark those query selectors. And let's write this query here, right? So we're looking for movies that are rated basically PG or PG-13. And so if we look at the rated, key, let me see where I can find rated. So rated PG-13. That was not an array. This one says rated, not rated. So let's go ahead and write this query. Now I could copy it and paste it. So let's go through this. DB, kind of always start with DB. Then you say the collection, find, then you have a document, what property are you looking for, and then if you're going to use one of these query operators, query selectors, you need another set of curlies. $in, which I would similar to $EQ, and then these are the valid strings. So one or the other, and if we hit that, enter on that, we should see when rated is either PG or there's PG. Somewhere in here we should find a PG-13. Of course, there might just be a bunch of rated PG. That's another PG. And there's a PG-13. Okay, so okay, so the next thing that probably a lot of people are used to writing is when you have more complex situations like logical ands and ors. So a compound query can specify conditions for more than one field in the collection's documents. Implicitly, a logical and connects the clauses of a compound query, so the query selects the documents in the collection that match all of the conditions. So both have to be true. So to return movies were released in Mexico and have a rating of at least 7. Right? So this is a programming and. They both have to be true. So the country of Mexico is 1, separated by a comma, and then an IMDb rating greater than or equal to. So notice here's one of those query operators. So again, the EQ operator is implied right here. This is saying greater than or equal to 7. Let me go ahead and clear my screen. And if I hit enter there. So let's see. The country is Mexico, so that part we've met. And the IMDb rating. IMDb.rating. So IMDb.rating. So remember how we access sub-documents is property, it's the dot notation. So IMDb.rating of 8. Right? So the country is Mexico, IMDb rating is 8. If I kind of scroll up to the next document, country is Mexico, and IMDb rating is 7.6, and we said greater than 7, right? Greater than 7. We have a OR operator then. So ands are pretty easy. Ands, you just compound them together, separated by a comma. ORs, however, there is a $OR operator. So to return movies that were released in 2010 and either won at least 5 awards or have a genre of drama. So here's the first condition, year 2010, here, and then and one or the other of those. So this is combining an and an or. Right? So the $or is where you put the property. So this syntax is a little bit different. because an or is, if you just wanted to do an or, well, here's an or right here. This is an or. Awards.wins greater than 5, or genres of drama. But then since we did the year of 2010, that puts a and on the front half of that. All right, so this one's a little bit more complex, combining ands and or, and an or. And just copy that right straight from there. We will be doing more than just this tutorial. I just think this is a really good start, right? And so at minimum, looking at this, let me clear the screen, paste this. Every result should be 2010, of the year of 2010. So let's just kind of start there. The result should be 2010. I'm getting this right. So here's my document, and here's my year of 2010. So we've got the year of 2010. The second part of that is the awards.wins greater than 5. Awards.wins is 13. So that makes the year of 2010 and awards.win greater than 5. Both of those are true. Let's go to the next document up. So we should start by observing the year is 2010. And then let's go to awards.wins. Let's see if it's also awards.wins. Now keep in mind these documents are flexible, so they might not even have an awards.wins. And I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing, oh, awards.wins is 6. Okay, so both conditions are met on that document. One more to see if I can fully flush this out. Okay, this is awards.wins is 1, right? So that's an example of the or portion. So let's start with the 2010. Okay, so the year should be 2010. We see the year is 2010. Awards.wins is 1, so that makes that false. But here you have an or. The genre is drama. Genre is drama. We have a genre of drama. So here, that's in a condition of doing both ands and ors. And that's a good, that's your intro to selecting or reading data out. Okay, now I'm going to do a few more examples and encourage you guys to follow along, clear the screen. Let's continue with some examples after a quick break. Okay, so the next step is to just do CRUD on some things. What I'd like to do is take it back to my retro Amazon, right? And actually seed some data into my database so that I can then continue to use that moving forward. So every lecture I'm going to lecture on some things that'll prepare you for the lab kind of deal, and my retro Amazon is the topic that I'll be lecturing on throughout the course of the semester. That'll ultimately prepare you for your issue tracker. Now I don't have a database, right? So if I, kind of show DBs, I don't have a retro Amazon. And so you would start by use retro Amazon. And this is kind of like the test database now. It's not created yet. In fact, if I show DBs, I still don't have a retro Amazon there. But as soon as I create my first collection and insert a document, then the database will be created. What are my collections? Well, I've got an ERD. An ERD is kind of a database diagram, and I can share that with you. But there's a collection of users, there's a collection of books, there's a collection of orders, and there's another collection called order items. And so I'm kind of looking at 4 collections. And we'll just start with one. We'll start with the book collection. I think that's the easiest collection to start with. And I'm going to make it a singular book. So let me do this. Yeah, so I'm gonna make my collection name singular, so it's gonna be singular book. And I have a bunch of books. I have seed data that I'm going to use to insert many books, and kind of going back to our methods. If I go back to my methods and I go back to my collection methods, we're doing CRUD operations, and so there should be an insert many, and so this is the one that I'll be using. So DB is kind of the prefix. DB in this case represents the retro Amazon DB that I am currently in use of. Okay, so DB dot, and then you get to name the collection here. This is, since this is the no collections exist. In fact, if I show collections, you know, there are none. So I'll say DB book. You know, you're creating this collection, and then we're going to say insert many, lowercase I, capital MANY, open parenthesis. And if you kind of see here at some examples of insert many, it can take an array of documents, and so inside of here you notice an array of documents is the syntax. And so I'm going to provide with everyone my array of documents in Discord, so that we can insert this into so I'm going to paste in my array of documents. Now let me put a closing parenthesis and see what breaks. Okay, you can see I have 20 books here. My books have IDs, ISBNs, titles, authors, genres, publications, prices, and descriptions. It's not an object ID. It is just a string ID 20. Again, not best practice. But let's start here. And it does say acknowledged of true. And it is kind of doing this interesting thing with IDs. And so I might change this a little bit and delete my ID. So let me kind of pull up Notepad and kind of change up this data a little bit. And what I'm going to do very quickly is for every ID, kind of find underscore ID, and I'm just going to delete that from every document, because what happens in Mongo is if you don't give it an ID, it'll generate an object ID for you, and that's going to be my preference. So let me just quickly delete the IDs, and then I'll give you guys the sample data. Just if you're following along, you can do so. Okay. So let's Control A, Control C, copy the updated document. Now if I clear the screen, hit enter. Come on, clear screen. Okay, clear the screen. Show collections. Okay, now I've got a book collection that I need to essentially drop. So I'm going to do db.book.drop, db.book.drop. And now if I show collections, it's gone, right? So drop is your delete, how to delete a collection. You know, be careful with that command. Dropping collections is a very dangerous thing to do. But now let's go ahead and do db.book.insert and copy my books, put the closing parenthesis, hit enter, and notice it generated object IDs for me, which is my preference. Now if I do clear the screen, db book.find. Okay, now we've got our books. Let's go back here, browse collections, and click on Retro Amazon. Whoop. And see the book collection. Here I can see I've got 20 books put into my Retro Amazon database. All right, so insert many, powerful command, array of documents, and that's great. Yep. Yep, let me go ahead and thank you for reminding me. I'll paste that into Discord. Okay, so the next thing is if I show collections now, we should see a book collection, right? You want to see a book collection? And db.book.find should give us all of our 20 results. If I type in IT, well, I guess that's all my results. Yeah, if you close out of this and open it back up, it's still there. It persisted.
Where does it, so it saves it on your PC then?
No, this is saved in the cloud.
Okay, so it's saved
This
on
is saved in the cloud.
Atlas.
This is saved on Atlas. Yep. Yeah, we're connected into Atlas. Okay, so that was an insert many, so you should have an idea how to do that. Let's just do a single insert. Okay, so this is just going to be inserting one. And notice insert, it's the same idea, but there's no brackets, right? So this is just one object, of which we're going to wind up deleting it anyways. And so let's do db book.insert and title dummy book ISBN, and you can again kind of look at the referencing above, 978, jibber jabber. Author,
You're an author?
now I am. Genre, dystopian. Price, well, we're going to make this nice and pricey. $999. Description. My very best book. Close the document, close the parentheses. It'll generate an object ID for us. Thank you. I was just looking over here. Insert 1 is the correct mongosh command. So thank you for pointing that out. I'm going to backspace before I hit enter. I'm going to change insert into insert 1. Noticing right here, big text, this method is deprecated in mongosh. Now let's hit enter on that. And when you get the acknowledged as true, it's obviously worth noting if that says acknowledged false, then the insert isn't actually done. So let's write a find against that. Let's do dbbook.find a title of, and let's check out case sensitivity, dummy book. Parenthesis, no results. Let's capitalize that D, capitalize the B. Okay, so case sensitivity is a thing. You can change that, but that by default, your queries are case sensitive. Okay, and the way to change that is with the database settings itself. But just take note, it is case sensitive by default. Okay, so we've done an insert. We've done a read. We've done several reads in our demonstrations. Let's update. Let's do an update, and then we're gonna kind of be released into lab because you guys have at that point had the foundation. We'll do an update. We'll do a delete. You guys will have the foundation to start exploring on your own. DB book update 1. Update 1. Now this command's a little interesting. It takes 2 objects separated by commas. Okay, now what goes in the first object? This is essentially performing our search. So what book are we going to update? I'm going to update the book with the title of dummy book. So this is our search. And then we have to say what we're changing about it. So I'm going to $set : and then here's a third document, what we're changing. We're going to set the price, instead of $999.50, we are increasing the price to $1,000. Okay, and making sure everything is nested properly. Okay. Again, the first thing that you're doing is the search. You have to find, and it'll update since this is an update 1, the first book that returns true on this search will be the book that it updates. Right? So there is also an update many command that you could explore, of course. It's going to operate like it sounds. It's going to update many books, but let's go ahead and hit that. We get the acknowledged as true, which is good. Let's go ahead and perform our search. And now you can see the price has been updated. And last but not least, we should delete. And here's our methods, delete 1 versus delete many. It's kind of nice because it's just the operation followed by the word 1. Insert 1, update 1, delete 1. So the methods themselves are intuitive. And it returns true and a deleted count. And so here's our syntax. Delete 1 with our set of curlies. So here's the example where you've got a document. Now they're putting this into try catch, but basically here's the method, db orders delete 1. where an ID is equal to an object ID of such. So let's do that. Let's delete by the object ID. So here's our object ID for our book. So we're going to do db book dot delete one parenthesis curly. Again, this should be flexible to be in quotes or not. Underscore ID colon. Now I copied right here. You just highlight with the mouse, and then if you right click, that'll perform a copy. And then if you right click again right here, it should perform a paste. All right, I need to close my curly. And I need to close my method parenthesis. Okay, we get an acknowledged of true, we get a deleted count of 1, and so the book is now gone. Notice object ID, you couldn't just put it in a string. You had to wrap it inside of an object ID, converting the string into the appropriate data type. Okay, it's kind of a try-parse, if you will, or a parse float. You just got to convert it to the right type. If you don't put that string in the right type, then it won't return true, and you won't delete the book. Now, if I do my find operation, you can see that's now no longer finding the book because it's gone. Okay, so we did CRUD operations. You now know how to do some basic operations. We did find operations. We showed you a bunch of different ways how to find, and especially those operators, the $ equal to, the $ and, $ or, Mongo query operators, or what those are called. Okay, so this is a page this page right here is going to help you do a lot of we can't go through all of these examples right now, it would take 3 days. Okay, but this is a page you're going to want to reference on your lab. All right, that's a good stopping point. I'll go ahead and open up the lab for everybody.